this is even crazier. When I did get banned from my federation, I was part of an art exhibit in London, Ontario, which was just celebrating my overcoming addiction. I basically told them about my sexual trauma, my suicide attempt, and how I made Team Canada. The museum found out that I was banned from my federation for speaking a biological fact, and they yanked my exhibit.
Oh, wow.
But no one in Canada, not even politicians. I actually met Doug Ford, and he shook my hand, and he said, April, I totally agree with you. I have 3 daughters in sports. Something needs to be done, but it's been crickets ever since.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My guest today is April Hutchinson. April's an athlete, and I didn't know anything about April until International Women's Day, not long ago, when I tuned into a meeting that was going on in the Toronto area. And I listened to all the speakers, and I listened to April, and I thought she was the best speaker, and her story really was good, but it was also a necessary story because we need to talk about women's sports. And so thank you for coming on my podcast. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. I'm quite honored. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's really nice because I took a kinesiology degree. I was a young athlete, spent all my time racing in swimming, playing volleyball in high school, playing basketball until I didn't grow, you know?
Yeah.
Then everyone got bigger than me. I quit playing basketball. I curled nationally.
Oh, wow.
So I liked sports a lot, and I did yoga actually, and I wanted to know if I should take that further. So I went to university and I studied kinesiology. And so I was there with all the athletes who were there to become eventual coaches or athletes or teachers or eventually physiotherapists and nurses. There's lots of things you can do in sports these days. But to be an athlete, that's a special skill, right? You have to have a special skill to compete, to be an athlete. You can do all these other things as well. But when you're on the ground and you're training and you're going to be competing, that's something that we all watch because it's excellence. And we want to see what it's like and be part of something that's excellent. And so it's a big deal that we talk about sports and what's going on in sports. So I would like you to introduce yourself and tell everybody what happened, just so we have the scope of what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. So I started powerlifting in 2019 as a way to help me with my mental health and addictions. I actually entered rehab for alcohol addiction in September 2018. When I came out, I thought, well, I have to do something to help me with my as an outlet or a release. So I started powerlifting in my friend's garage. Now, this was right before COVID hit. So thank God, because, if I wasn't training, if I wasn't sober, I'd surely be dead right now. So I literally spent almost every day just training in my friend's garage. Within 2 years, there was no competitions to be had. But when the competitions did roll out, I discovered how strong I was because I didn't have anything to compare myself to. So my first competition was at regionals. I got gold medal, which led me to nationals, which led me to the world stage, in which I got 4th place at the very first Worlds.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
That's quite a rise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny if you ask any athlete, getting 4th place, I wasn't happy with that. So
that's right.
Yeah. So, but obviously, I talked to others, and I'm like, that's great. So, but no, that's just the pressure that athletes put on themselves. But during that time frame, I discovered that there was a male-born athlete, trans-identifying male. I will just use the words male. That was in my powerlifting, actually my category. The same weight class, same age, everything. And he started competing, and I was the only person that knew about it because he confided in me. He did admit that he was a male. He had competed a couple of times prior to that and never told anyone, so no one ever knew that they were competing against this male. So when he told me that, I said, well, that's completely wrong. That is unfair, and I will speak up. I will not be quiet about this. I think my exact words were, I will raise hell. And he blocked and deleted me never spoken to him again. And fast forward, I wrote to the Federation. I spoke up. And because I spoke up, specifically on the Piers Morgan show, I called the male lifter a man on that show, and my federation decided to ban me for 2 years because I spoke up.
Oh, on the Piers Morgan show.
Yeah, it was specifically the Piers Morgan show. We were talking about the differences between men and women, and I've said many times that when I refer to this lifter, you have to call him a male. We're talking about sports. We're talking about biology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bodies compete in sports, not identities. So you really need to call a man. You need to call a woman. And because I called him a man, I got banned for 2 years from my federation.
And that was a Canadian federation or an Ontario federation? What was that?
It's the Canadian Powerlifting Union. So okay. It's basically the federation that I have gone through that I don't lift with them now, but it's the route that you would take to get onto Team Canada. Mm-hmm. And that's who I was lifting with for about 3 years.
I see. Now, you've been interviewed by a number of different people. I don't know everybody because it's been quite a few. Mm-hmm. How many people from the legacy media and how many politicians have been interested in the story and taken this up as something that they should be paying attention to?
Well, in Canada?
Yes.
No one. Except for Rebel News. As far as, CBC has done a couple articles about me because this is even crazier. When I did get banned from my federation, I was part of an art exhibit in London, Ontario, which was just celebrating my overcoming addiction. I basically told them about my sexual trauma, my suicide attempt, and how I made Team Canada. The museum found out that I was banned from my federation for speaking a biological fact, and they yanked my exhibit.
Oh, wow.
So CBC did an article on that. Basically, it was kind of a balanced article, which usually they sway to the left, but no one in Canada, not even politicians. I actually met Doug Ford, mm-hmm. and he shook my hand, mm-hmm. and he said, "April, I totally agree with you. I have 3 daughters in sports. Something needs to be done," mm-hmm. but it's been crickets ever since. Mm-hmm. But it's been mostly the U.S. Like I was on Tucker Carlson.
Right.
I was on Piers Morgan 3 times. A lot of U.S. press.
Yeah.
Which, that's not helping me drowning here in Canada. So
no. And it's here that we have to take this,
yes,
and make it real. So why powerlifting? I just want to ask you that. Like, why not swimming, or what drove you to go to that garage and start lifting weights?
It's funny. A lot of people ask me that. It's very empowering.
Mm-hmm.
I love to lift heavy weights. I've always been like, even though I was kind of, I guess, a functioning alcoholic for most of my life, I always made an honest effort to take care of myself. And I honestly owe sports my life because I wouldn't be alive today if I didn't make that effort to go to the gym. Even if I went to the gym and puked after my workout, I still tried to better myself and be healthy, mm-hmm. And eating healthy as well. So, I just found it like a good release. Like, it's a good thing. I still, like, when I have a bad day, if I'm angry, I love to go into the gym and just slam the weights around. Mm-hmm. I've always been into sports, like even MMA. It kind of got me into powerlifting a little bit to help me with the strength and conditioning. But
I didn't know there's MMA for women as well as men.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I did a cage fight when I turned 40.
Oh, yeah.
In front of 1,000 people, and that was like I did.
How big is the cage? How big is the cage?
Oh, gee, I don't even know. It's basically the same cage you would see on the UFC. I don't know if you watched the UFC.
But... Well, when I was a kid, I watched Stampede Wrestling and whatever they called the boxing on Saturday afternoons.
Okay,
I watched all of that.
Yeah.
So about that, as big as a ring, a boxing ring?
Yeah, probably a little bit bigger. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost the same as a boxing ring, but it has the caged sides.
Huh. And so when there's the cage, where's the safes? Is there any, like, corner or something? No, there's nothing.
No, there's not.
Oh, wow.
So I got into MMA, and I only did one fight, but again, it was kind of like, hey, why not? Like, and it was a new thing for women to be getting into it, too.
I bet that brought a lot of adrenaline up.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, very cool. I think it's so cool.
It is. I feel like, I played every sport, growing up as a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And I was so good when I was a little kid that they would kind of partner me up with males, with boys.
Oh, yeah.
And it was always like all the kids would gather around and go buy tickets to watch this girl and see if she could beat, like I used to do the 100-meter sprint.
Oh, yeah.
See if I could beat a boy. So,
Yeah.
I always like a good challenge. And I think that's a lot of athletes, when you go back to, talking about athletes, we want to be the best. We are obsessed with being number one. And that's what makes you a great athlete. And that's what puts me aside, apart from someone else, right? That just kind of does it for recreational. Like, I want to be number one. I want to excel.
Right.
I want to go to Worlds. So.
And then this other person named Anne, what do you think his motivation was? I mean, he wanted to win, but why did he want to compete against women?
Well, truly, I have said this many times. Anne's number one thing was that he wanted to dominate. I do believe he's misogynistic. I do believe it's about control and it's about dominating, because there are trans athletes that just want to simply live their lives and have fun, be a part of the sport. But then you have, I guess, what they call male grifters that come into the sport. They just want to take women's medals. They want to take prize money. They want to take scholarships away. They can't handle being number 6,000, because Anne would be number 6,000 if he actually competed with the men.
Right.
So I do think it's dominance and misogyny.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely got the dark triad of, I listen to him. He's very aggressive, verbally aggressive, and what he says is aggressive. So there isn't any nuance in his approach. It's just aggression.
I call him the unhinged man. And that's the difference, is that I would have respect for Anne if Anne, he made death threats towards myself and Premier Daniel Smith. He's threatened me. He's allowed to make threats the whole year around, but the Canadian Powerlifting Union did not suspend him. I got suspended for biological
Has anybody ever been suspended?
No. I'm literally the first person in the world for being banned for speaking biological facts, for basically calling a trans woman a biological man.
So how did he get into the category? Because how did the people who were running the show know he was a woman, or know he was a man or a woman? How would they distinguish between a man or a woman? Or does that not make any difference to them?
Well, that's the clincher, is with the Canadian Powerlifting Union, with their gender diverse and inclusion policy, there's you could, like, my boyfriend could walk in tomorrow and say, I'm a female today. They don't ask questions. You actually don't even have to declare your sex. You just show up. And that's what got us into this situation.
That's Bill C-16?
Yeah. Basically, the gender expression is now protected. So basically, no questions asked. Any man, and this happened, Tammy, a Team Canada coach, this big, burly, bearded man who, has been powerlifting for about 10 years, walked in to an Alberta competition and took the bench records from women just to prove a point of how weak the policy is.
Oh, I see.
So he did it to kind of mock the policy, to prove a point.
Yeah.
Because Anne actually holds 3 out of the 5 records in Alberta right now. So
brutal.
Yeah. So there's no policy protecting women right now. There's no policy.
So it's no wonder this is happening then.
Yes.
Right?
But because I did speak up, though, the international body did pressure them to change the policy to the point where they have to do testosterone monitoring, and they also have to submit medical and psychological records, only at an international level, though. So Anne can still go to provincials, he can still go to local meets, he can still take best female lifter awards and money and stuff like that. So,
And how did that policy get put in place?
Because I spoke up.
When did that get put in place? When did that happen?
In November of last year.
Oh, okay.
So I basically, was basically telling everyone, like, look, there's a man competing. I went to the International Powerlifting Federation, who I have a wonderful relationship with, because they basically side with me. They understand, right? And so I said, you need to do something. So they actually came down on the Canadian Powerlifting Union and told them, you need to follow the IPF policy at a international level. Meaning, if any athlete wants to go to Team Canada or Worlds, they have to follow the transgender policy of testosterone monitoring and psychological records. So Anne wanted to go to Worlds. Well, guess what? Anne did not submit his psychological records or his medical records. So he's not
Wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Probably doesn't have any friends that are doctors.
Exactly right. Yeah.
He would just make enemies of everyone by the looks of it.
And that goes to prove my point that if he was just happy lifting and not being dominant, he would be like, okay, you know what, I'll step back. Because I've talked to transgender friends of mine and they're like, you know what? If we go into a sport and a female has a problem with it, they even said, you know, if we go into a bathroom and someone feels uncomfortable, we step out. That's the way it should be, right? So that's why I'm saying there's two different, types of transgender, you know?
So what kind of thoughts do you have that would change the system so that it would work better?
Well, let's get rid of Bill C-16.
Okay, that's a start.
Please.
That's a start.
Yeah. So, they need to, every province can change their policy, right? So Alberta, where we have Premier Danielle Smith, right? She is changing legislation. She is implementing it in October. I think I'm meeting with her in 2 weeks, her advisor, and they have a great policy in place. Basically, they're creating a co-ed,
Category?
Category.
Oh, I see.
For, for men that can lift, and also for any women out there that support this. Because you know what? There's a lot of women out there that support this, and it's just maddening. So they can go lift with the men if they wish.
Right.
And so, and also the records that are held by men should be stripped and given back to the rightful owners, the female owners. So basically, this has to happen at all these provinces. I'm hoping now it'll be domino effect and other provinces will follow suit, right?
So Alberta, you said in 2 weeks is going to have this in place?
I'll be meeting with the LGBT plus advisor for Danielle Smith. So, because he's actually asked for our input as athletes on how to kind of create this policy. So she's already kind of dabbled and kind of released some information. I think it was like last month, but it will be implemented and taking place in October. That's when it will actually start.
Yeah, she's done a great job.
Oh, I love her.
Speaking up about this. Even before she put it in place before Britain to stop puberty blockers.
Exactly.
Getting puberty blockers to children.
Yes.
So that's a good person to work with.
Love it. Yeah. I actually have a I Stand With Danielle Smith t-shirt. I should have worn that today.
Oh, yeah, that would have been good. Yeah, that would have been good. We'll have to find one of those. Now, we've come to a very strange place now in our sports and in many, many other situations where we now have men and women sharing associations, sharing workplaces, sharing clubs. They're, everybody is involved in everybody else's business. And that's what I'm seeing anyway. And I'm thinking, what did women do, if anything, to cause this problem? If there's anything that you can think of that we've done that we could talk about and rethink to try to bring things back to some normal way of normal peace among the sexes.
I've said this many, many times. Unfortunately, the problem is women. This is why not all women, but allowing the men into the bathrooms and not saying something about it, or allowing men into sports, a lot of the women are supporting this.
Right.
And again, I think we've touched on this before, is women are just more nurturing creatures.
Yes.
We're more tolerant.
Yeah.
But I think what's happening is that women are also forgetting that, I learned this in rehab. You can love people and be accepting of people, but with boundaries. And I think that's what's happening, is that there's no boundaries. And they don't want to offend someone, right? Because they think, no, there has to be that boundary. It's like I go to restaurants now and the women's washroom is gone. It's all unisex. And I was like, where's my bathroom? And I will actually go up to the manager and say, why did you take the women's bathroom away? I don't feel comfortable going in. I don't feel comfortable putting my 6-year-old niece into a bathroom.
Right.
So I guess what we ask for is just, a separate men's, women's, and a unisex. Give us options. Don't take things away. And that's what's happening. I wasn't alive during the 60s and 70s. So I wasn't there for the feminist movement, which I wish I was. But I think that's the biggest problem. And then you have men who just kind of sit on the sidelines And I find that really peculiar too, because I mean, my boyfriend, he walks around and wears his Keep Female Sports female hoodie. He's, to me, a real man. He talks out loud about it. He educates people about it. He has 3 girls, but he still says, no, like, this is wrong. And they're captured by the gender ideology in schools. Like, they actually don't agree with anything that we're doing.
Right.
But we just feel like in time, they'll get it. So
yeah, once they have kids of their own.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Well, people don't grow up till they have children, really.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to take on a mature attitude before you have someone in your life that's more important than you are.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. It'd be difficult in these old buildings to make a third bathroom, because some of these buildings have been around for a very long time. So I wonder what's going to happen really pragmatically, because I can see further in the future building situations where you have even separate bathrooms so that everybody has their own lock on their own separate door, so that everybody has their own space to be. But as it is now, there's just men and there's women in these gorgeous old hotels and stuff. We're going to... So that's very tricky, because I can imagine as a transgender person needing to go into the other bathroom, feeling like they can't go in the bathroom that they used to go in when they were dressed in their biological sex pattern. Now they have to go in this one and they're not welcome in there. So very tricky. Like, we have a tricky problem.
I know, it was never tricky before, though.
I know. So why is this so tricky now?
I just feel like, but like I said, I think my solution of just having, just don't take away the women's washroom. I mean, if there's a man in there with me that I say maybe don't know about, then that's fine. But it's just, I just feel like it's being forced. It's being forced upon us.
Yeah, well, anything that's forced, is a bad idea.
Exactly. And that's when people rebel, and that's when people get angry.
So maybe every building has to figure out how they're going to deal with this on their own and not be mandated to do. Yeah.
And I think, you would know, Tammy, like when we go to locker rooms, or if I'm at the gym, I was at the YMCA the other day, and when I dress, I could be in there alone, but I'm like covering up. Like, we're just like that.
I haven't been to a gym since all of this happened. I just stopped going.
Well, and that's what I mean.
How many people did that, I wonder? Just stopped going.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I just think we're a private creature. I mean, women are like that. We go to the washroom together in groups to do our hair, to do our makeup, to, whatever. And I just think it's all taken away now, and I don't feel safe. I mean, I'm a sexual assault survivor too.
Right.
I don't feel safe, especially when they had the mixed or the unisex bathrooms at the bars and there was alcohol involved.
Yeah, right.
I remember in New York City, this was years ago before they introduced them, and I thought I went into the wrong bathroom. Basically, I came out and there was a man there in the common area washing his hands, and I was like, oh, sorry.
Right.
And he's like, oh no, this is a joint bathroom. But wow, did the hair ever go back, go up the back of my head? I was like super scared. And so, I mean, I don't, I was abused when I was about 6 years old. So, I mean, I have a 6-year-old niece. Of course, these things go through my head, right? So,
yes, that's right. And how are people supposed to get by some of the traumas that we've had in our lives if we're going into situations where we're getting triggered by those things? It's very difficult.
No, exactly.
To have the courage and strength to do the things we have to do if the situations that we're in are not predictable.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard enough to go into, say, a hospital to go see someone. If it's hard enough because what you're going to see in there is going to be vulnerable situations that I have to ask God for courage and strength to do some things, or I don't have the courage to do it. And if I'm going into a place where it's even more triggering, then I don't know if I'd go. So you're going to get people avoiding going and facing the things that we need to face. We're already having a society that is staying in their houses and not saying anything. This is just going to make it worse. And you're going to be more likely to close the blinds and lock the door.
Well, it's true. That's what people do, right?
Yeah, maybe that's the motivation behind it.
Yeah.
Is to get us all to really get back in our houses and not complain about the way things are being.
What's funny, I feel like this really blew up during COVID when, we heard of cross-dressers way back in the day, right? And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. Everyone was sitting at home. Everyone's a keyboard warrior. Everyone can type whatever they want. They can be whoever they want. We have kids with trauma who don't like their bodies, like me. I wasn't comfortable in my skin. But now you have kids going, well, I'm not comfortable, so I'm just going to be the other sex, or, I'll identify as a cat, whatever, to help them feel better. And all of a sudden, poof, COVID's over. People are out. We're mingling. We're interacting again. People do not know how to talk to each other even, or have face-to-face conversations, or how to deal with such a thing as men in sports, or, men in women's bathrooms. Everyone's like, we don't want to offend. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. And that the whole Be Kind movement came out during COVID as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's what got us here, was the Be Kind movement. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shut up and put up with what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's a very bad message.
Exactly. And again, like what I said before, you can love and accept someone, but with boundaries. And that's what people are not doing.
Yeah. And so what gave you the courage to, because you've really spoken up. You've really spoken up, and as far as you could go, and repeatedly. So what gives you the courage to go and do all of this?
Well, I mean, I think I have a strong personality, and I felt like, I'm the only real Canadian athlete speaking up right now.
You're right.
Like, if I didn't, who else would? I mean, Dr. Linda Blade, she's been outspoken as well, but I mean, no one else is. So,
and tell me about Dr. Blade.
So I met her during, when I was starting to fight about this whole topic about this male in my powerlifting federation. I was very alone in my fight, and I got connected with Linda Blade, who's the head of athletics in Alberta. She actually wrote a book, How Trans Activism Has Destroyed Sports. And she kind of came in and swooped me in her arms and helped me kind of fight my federation. Her and my lawyer, who I had to hire to actually appeal my suspension, both of them came and helped me, along with like Riley Gaines and some other athletes. So she's just been brilliant. So I'm actually meeting her in a couple of weeks. We're going to Edmonton, Alberta to do some talks, but she's just been a godsend.
What happened when you repealed your 2-year suspension?
Well, it actually went to a third-party organization because the Canadian Powerlifting Union were like, whoa, we better toss this off because we don't want to get sued, which I'm still going to be suing them. So they basically passed it on to a third-party organization. Mm-hmm. They looked at the case. They reduced it to 1 year, which I kind of knew they were going to do because it's kind of like a middle-of-the-road, safe decision. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't think I should have deserved that, like the ban at all. Obviously, I'm not happy about it. And that's why.
I can't see why.
Yeah.
You were telling the truth.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the truth isn't legal anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, no, exactly.
Fun and games.
Yeah.
Fun and games.
I'll keep you posted, though. I'm actually currently looking for, my brother's a lawyer here in Toronto, and we're trying to get that right. We're trying to get a pro bono lawyer that will take on the case because it'll get such higher exposure. So
yeah,
there's a couple of athletes now that are speaking up.
Okay.
Because I spoke up. So we actually have a bunch that probably will do it jointly. So yeah.
Dissident cats.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get T-shirts.
Yeah. That's another T-shirt. Yeah, exactly.
T-shirt. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it's really Alberta. It's not New Brunswick. It's not, there aren't any other, no? Alberta. No, well, BC for sure not, but Saskatchewan? No?
So it's funny. I actually got asked a couple months ago, John Rustad, he's a PC, he's a conservative out in BC. Mm-hmm. Now it's an NDP leadership out there, majority. And they actually wrote me and said, we'd like you to be present for this tabling of a bill that we're doing to keep female sports female. And I was like, wonderful. And they're like, we want you to be present. We want, like, they're asking Riley Gaines, like all these big names. And to come. And all of a sudden, after Alberta or Danielle Smith announced her little spiel, it was crickets after that. But I did hear that Pierre kind of sent out a memo to everyone saying, like, let's just be quiet on this topic for now.
Oh, okay.
Because he's so high, like he's way ahead in the polls, right? You know, so which is smart. It's just strategy on his part. But there was a couple of people that were contacted, like Amy Ham, myself, about this bill.
Amy Ham, she's a nurse in BC. So, yes, very outspoken.
Yes, I met her.
Rightly so.
Yes. Yeah, I'm interested to see how her case ends up because I met her a couple weeks at the International Women's Day. So,
yeah. She's been fighting a good fight with the hospitals because of all the mandates that happened during the COVID lockdown that were detrimental to her, to the treatment that she was giving in her hospitals. Right? So that
we have the same lawyer, Lisa Bildy. So
okay,
we're in good hands.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to Jord about other options maybe for councils too. Maybe that we can, if you're looking for.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. Because I mean, for sitting back and letting them suspend me, that's to me, I'm just going, okay, that's cool. I deserve that. And it's not right. And there's a lot of board members on the Canadian Powerlifting Union that are biased. They either have like a trans child or it was never a fair treatment, especially when you see that Anne has been making threats and has never been disciplined. And I was literally just told to shut up immediately. And I was like, no. And so, and then I got banned.
Well, we should talk about board members for a little bit. Who becomes a board member? You know, that's a good question. Who becomes a board member? Who becomes a school board member? Who becomes a board member on sports teams? City council? Who does all of these things, and why have things gone wrong? Civic duty. Right? It's a civic duty to belong. And for some reason, we've got out of the... It's not part of our... we go to school, we go to university, we get a job, we get married, these things, we have kids. Like, those things are starting to crumble. The civic duty went along with all of that and has fallen out of the purview of acceptable behavior in your community. I think because of social media and all of this online life, that the whole idea of community and that you're responsible for the other people that live around you has evaporated. And, this is something we've depended on forever. And things were stable for a very long time. And now they're not. Why aren't they? Everybody has to take their responsibility, take up their cross and bear it. Everybody has to sink. Or those niggly things that bother you. No. You don't like how the school board's acting? Get on the school board. Get on the school board. Sit and listen. See what you can do if it bugs you. It's not someone else's responsibility, right?
No, exactly. I mean, if I could get on to the Canadian Powerlifting Union board, I mean, I would.
Is it a closed?
It's a little trickier there. It's a lot of like who you know. I think there are some board members on there that I did hear sided with me, but they're like, well, it's easier just to be quiet. We'll lose money if we speak up. Money talks. So, I mean, when you talk about a sense of community, though, I mean, you nailed it. I just feel like since social media, people think having someone like their photos on Instagram is a sense of community.
Right.
I went to a CPR class the other day, and I was in like a recreational center, and there's all these 80-year-olds in there playing euchre, and they were playing badminton, and they were having a great time. And I said to my boyfriend, I want to do this when I get older. That's a sense of community.
That's community. Yeah.
And I think, to me, I say it all the time, the purpose for me in my life, and I think in humanity, is to help one another. That's how we survive. That's how we get by. And now you just see people like literally, like we have a homeless problem. I mean, I know you do in Toronto, but in London, I'm like, people just turn a blind eye to it now. They don't everyone thinks they're going to offend someone, or, you know, if they actually stop and give someone a sandwich or a cup of coffee. And it's really sad where the world is right now, to be honest. Like,
yeah, well, we've forgotten what it is that's important, you know. And I don't know my scripture very well, but I do know that in scripture somewhere it says that if you don't pay attention to the most needy, then you're not paying attention to me. And so it is our responsibility to take care of everyone, our neighbor, everyone, not just for our own benefit, but for their benefit. And that's what we're taught when we're in these kind of maturing programs that are good for people. You know, this Al-Anon, I went to Al-Anon, and I think that it's just a good maturing program. It teaches you good principles of life, to tell the truth, but don't speak up if it's going to hurt someone else, to wait and find the next right thing to do. Not what you think to do, but what you see as the next right thing to do. Make it real. Live in reality. We live so much now in a virtual space. I think we're getting all twisted.
No, it's true. And it's funny, like I touched on my speech at the International Women's Day. And like, I mean, AA is very similar, obviously, to Al-Anon.
Yes,
and
very similar.
And I always tell people this. I'm like, anyone would benefit going to rehab. I suggest it. Yeah, you would love it. Right. It's like literally 30 days or 28 days where you can literally just focus on yourself and just work on what makes you tick, what, you know, just all the trauma. Anyways, I love it. And I just, my AA coin, I have it with me right now. And on the back of it, it says, "To thine own self be true." Yeah. And I just always remember that message because, you know, to me, like when I had to deal with all this stuff with the Federation, them basically saying, "No, just accept it, April. Just pass it along that he's a woman, like, you know, lie." And my boyfriend, like when I found out he was a man, I just couldn't sleep. And I was like, I don't feel good. This does not sit well with me. And that's when we talk about the turning point. Like, you know, that's when the crossroads where I decided, okay, well, no, I got to say something. Yeah, I might lose some stuff, which obviously I lost my sport and the able to lift and to compete. But I guess that's when, you know, integrity plays in, right? Integrity is very important to me, and telling the truth, right? Because my sobriety, I wouldn't be here today without my sobriety. And guess what's going to make me relapse? Lying, resentments, all these things, right? That lying to myself, that's going to make me drink again. And I tell you, this year was very hard. It was a real test to that. I hadn't had a craving to drink for a couple of years now. And this was the first year that I actually thought, oh, just, you know, I just want to escape for just even an hour of this, right? So, but no, I was good. I got 5 years coming up in September, so I was good. So, you know, but my coin, I mean, I think anyone could carry that coin around and learn from it. So,
yeah, I carry a rosary. I was given a rosary in the hospital when I was sick.
I saw that video.
Yeah, so I've prayed with it for a very long time now, and it's helpful to me. Yeah, it reminds me to be true to myself. Right? To be true to what's true. In the Bible, Abraham sits in his tent till he's 75 and doesn't do anything, and finally he hears from God, and God says, it's time for you to go out and do something useful with your life and get out of your father's tent. And he doesn't want to go. Of course, everything that he needs is there, so he doesn't want to go, but he decides to leave. And of course, then there's all of the trials that he's given one after another to grow up, because you have to grow up. You're going to face all the things that you've been avoiding, all of the situations. And the gifts that you get, though, are the gifts that we get where we are true to ourselves. And then we start to be able to help our neighbors. And then we start to get community, or we start to get opportunities in the world. And you have opportunities in the world now, don't you think? It looks to me like that. You have a different life now, right?
Well, it's funny. I think about that all the time. And I did I ever think that, because like when I was drinking, I mean, first of all, I didn't think I was going to live.
Right.
I don't know if you saw my speech where I actually, tried to take my own life, and I just didn't want to live anymore. And I woke up in the ICU unit on a breathing tube.
Oh my goodness.
So I feel like I was here for something. And
yes.
I lived.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that took me into powerlifting when I went into rehab. Like, I didn't think I was going to be a powerlifter. I got into powerlifting, and my powerlifting led to me getting banned. And then all of a sudden, I'm now an advocate. And
and that's telling the truth that has got you one step after the next.
Exactly. And to me, this is my calling, is being an advocate for fairness in women's sports and protecting women and girls, and even just spaces, right? And this is what I love. I mean, the speech I did at International Women's Day, I just loved it.
It was great.
Yeah, and I didn't even have a speech prepared. I was just like, I'm just going to speak from my heart.
Yeah, that was really good too.
Yeah, it was so emotional. I was crying. I cry easily anyways, but yeah, it was very touching. And now I have a couple other ones lined up. So I have a big one here in Toronto in May. So
good. And what will that be for in what kind of venue will that be?
It's going to be near Downsview Park. Mm-hmm. It's through Rebel News. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be about 500 people. Okay. So it's a huge conference. Do you know Billboard Chris?
Yes.
He will be there.
Oh, good.
So I'm excited to meet him.
Yeah.
I think you had him on your show.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Well, we had this conference last October at ARC. There were lots of people there, and they had little, it was like trailers for podcasts.
Oh, cool.
And so I asked a whole number of women to be on my podcast, and they all said yes. So then I was really busy. I had no idea people would say yes. I was like, oh my goodness. So, and he was one of the ones who teamed up with one of the other ladies I'd asked. Yeah, so I got to have him on, and he's standing up for what he thinks is right. Yeah. And that's good.
And you don't see a lot of men doing that. That's the thing. So,
no.
Yeah. And it's just, it's going to be like a one-day conference. So, I mean,
that's probably
we don't release the location just in case there's activists and stuff. So, yeah, I love Rebel News. They've done a lot for me.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So,
yeah, they've come a long ways. They've been around for a while now. I first heard about Rebel News when Jordan was on the steps at the university.
Oh, yeah.
That's when they were there, and they were checking it out to see what was going on there. Oh, yeah, that was Lauren Southern. She was the reporter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She was the reporter that day, so that's when I met her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's come a long ways. I like the True North. I like True North.
True North. Yeah.
True North is good. We have some up and coming, but the legacy media, they're on the down and out.
Yeah.
All we have to do is stop funding them from the government.
No, exactly.
And they'll be gone.
Yeah, and I do think, you asked me earlier about changes, like what do I think is going to create change? And honestly, I think the biggest change is going to be a change of government. Like when Pierre gets in there, I do think there will be some changes.
I think there'll be changes as well, but there's been so much corruption and there's been so much damage that, it'll be hard for people to have the faith that they need to in the new government to see the changes happen before they kick them out and go back to the tyranny that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So I just pray that Canadians will have the patience to get through what we need to get through to rehabilitate the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I don't think it can get any worse than it is.
You don't?
Maybe in the next year for sure. But, I even since I've spoken out, I have seen, I go back to last March when I was all by myself and I was like, I felt very alone in my fight. Mm-hmm. Even just a matter of months, there was more people speaking out about it. And I could tell because I would post something on, say, even just Facebook. And people are like, oh, I don't know, like, what is she talking about, this transgender stuff? And no one would touch it. And now I post something and you got 100 people commenting like, yeah, this isn't right. And people are on board. So it's good. Nice. And different federations are changing as well. So.
Oh yeah, who's changing? Have you noticed?
Well, Strongman Corporation in Canada, they changed their policy basically because I pressured them to. They did they had a male going to nationals, and I said, you need to change the policy. This is completely unfair. So they made a separate category, but the male competitor was not happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
So he got violent. He made death threats towards me. So I contacted them again. I said, you need to suspend him. Like, he's now threatening women. So they actually suspended him. And so he's gone now. But yeah, I mean, I can't really name any other. I think, was it not Swim Canada? There was a swimming, was it Swim Canada? They made a different category. And of course, no transgenders showed up because, you know, that's no fun.
That's no fun.
Right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's a weird world, because people who have access now that didn't have access, or they just didn't have they had the law behind them now because of this C-16, right? They have the law behind them because it was a crooked law to begin with.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, I think people have to understand, because even my federation keeps saying, oh no, they're protected. Okay, but also there are women. Remember, women, sex was also part of that before they added in gender expression. So it is discrimination against women to make us compete against a stronger, like, biology. Like, you know, it's,
yes.
So,
yeah.
And again, it goes back to the bathrooms. Hello, we're women. We need our bathrooms. Like, they're just...
Yeah, it's reverse discrimination now.
Yeah, and I say this a lot, is like, you have this hierarchy, like you have a pyramid, and literally the white man is on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Jordan touched on this, but then you have, like, literally the trans are on the very top for rights. You know what I mean? So they're untouchable. Right now, to me, in my eyes, untouchable.
Yeah, and so then the people who are going to take advantage of that, yeah. So then there's going to be people within that population, like you said, not all the population, a very small percentage, probably 3% of them or something, are going to take advantage of that and get into places that, that they should have stayed away from if they had any sense at all. Yeah.
Well, and exactly, and that's what's happening. And that's why I do put these, like even Anne in that 3%, because they literally just want to dominate.
Right.
And I mean, even with the people, you do have men going into the washrooms and assaulting women, you know, that will use that as a way to get in there to assault.
Yeah.
So,
right. That's absolutely crazy. And it just can't go on. And it's really up to each of us to listen, learn, and act. Act on what's on our conscience, right? And take the steps forward. You know, if you can't sleep at night because something's on your mind, look into it and do what you can. Do the little thing that you can to get yourself so that you can sleep at night, and also start making a difference in some way locally. You don't have to think about big international. No, start locally. You started locally. I say this all the time. I usually like to end with this and say, please speak up, because you have to use your voice. Because I'll tell you, I actually work in a place where there's policies in place. You know, they suggest that you use pronouns. It's not a government job, but it's for the city. And I had a couple trans activists basically put complaints in about me to the city. And I kind of knew it was coming. So I sat down and they showed me 50 screenshots of my Twitter account. And they said that I was targeting the queer community. So I went through every shot with them. And they're like, oh, yeah, like, no, you're always respectful, April. You're respectful in all your interviews. They went through all my social media. And I said, I'll just tell you right now that my belief is that a man can never become a woman. And I also believe in two genders. And I said, you can't take that away from me. That's my belief. Like, you guys can believe whatever you want. But I said, I'm literally just exercising my freedom of thought, right? And belief. And they said, no, April, you're totally right. And they dismissed all the complaints. And I carried on, and I have the best job. Good for you.
So, and which I love. And it was really kind. I mean, it was not kind of them, but I was like, I was kind of a little scared at first, right? Because I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But no, I was really happy to see that they backed me. Even when the whole thing happened at the Museum of London,
What happened at the museum?
Well, when my exhibit got yanked.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, so they took my exhibit down. And the museum got so much backlash. They got so many letters saying, like, this is wrong. And they actually even said to my employer, like, look at April's, like, I think she's transphobic. And they're like, no, she's not. And so they even, like, supported me in that as well. So,
yeah, that's why you have to have a community, right? Because we can't do this by ourselves. You can't speak out by yourself if you've alienated all the people around you and you speak out. Well, that's not going to work.
Yeah,
you know, you have to have a community so that when the mob comes, then there's people to stand with you. Yeah. So you have to, put yourself in a situation where you have been someone that other people can depend on, and then you can depend on them.
No,
that's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was hyped about this for like a week.
I definitely was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such an honor to meet you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, really. Thanks.
Thank you.